Well, hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, 0, dark 30, whatever it is for you guys out there. Welcome back to the podcast that never sleeps, Skeptical Eye for the Paranormal Guys, Season 3, a season focused on interviews with people in the paranormal community and those with experiences. In the premiere episode of this season, we will be talking to my childhood friend Jake Skeens, whose family helped shape my paranormal beliefs. I would also like to take this time to dedicate this episode to Christy Skeens McMorris. We lost you too soon in 2020. Thank you for helping shape this podcast. Well, hey, brother, with that note, would you like to just jump into it?
Yeah, let's rock and roll.
So you've been my buddy for many, many years, and do you mind introducing yourself and just saying how we know each other there?
I'm RJ Skeens. Pat knows me as Jake. We've been friends since, probably 2006, since like elementary school. I think I met you the first time, and then we really sort of hung out a couple times in middle school here and there with a mutual friend.
And just growing up with each other's like families right around the block.
Yeah, being right down the street from one another.
And then eventually like literally right next door, which was the funniest part.
That was the craziest thing. Yeah. That was honestly, that was the coolest thing that happened to me in my like childhood and teenage life, was moving next door to you.
There's some
so many cool experiences have happened, and it's hard to imagine where I would be at in my life without meeting you. And you guys brought me on to the improv team junior year of high school.
Well, the weirdest thing was that we met through a mutual friend who lived in the house next door to me that eventually became the house that you lived in throughout at least the remainder of high school for us. So like
I lived there for 3 years. Sophomore, junior, and senior year. I helped our mutual friend move out of that house. Like a month and a half later, I moved into that house, and then I had the same bedroom as our mutual friend, and it was just really weird.
It was a very awkward time, but at the same time, it's funny because like weird synchronicities in life where it's just like, okay, so we mutually met through this guy, and now you're living in the same house. And then me and that guy became very good friends because of the proximity, and we kind of fell in suit there.
It's funny how that works.
So yeah, I had a lot of exposure to you and your family. And so I just wanted to go ahead and just say that, could you describe to me, I guess, the best you can, your background, and then to the earliest memories or ideas that you would consider paranormal activity?
So my whole family has really, I'd say my mom, my mom, myself, my grandma, they've all been really spiritually in tune. My grandma, she has said that we're Native American. We have Native American heritage, and she believes it's, linked to that and just being really in tune with like nature and the spirits and things along those lines, because they were all very in tune with that. My earliest experiences, I can think back, probably was when I was about 5 years old, when I was in
really young.
Preschool. Yeah, preschool or kindergarten. My mom, she told me I used to be able to see auras. I'd always ask her, I was like, why does this person have like blue around them? Why is this person have like an orange color or red or black and things like that? And she was like, what's wrong with my child? What's going on?
Yeah.
And so she like asked around. I don't know how you did it back in the day. You go to the library or something and ask people, but she found out that I could like see people's auras. But at this time in kindergarten, I lived in this apartment. And I remember seeing it almost every single day, this like black figure. It was always at the end of this hallway looking down. And so like I'd see this black figure down in my apartment at the end of the hallway, down near my parents' room and the laundry room. And I'd be standing in the living room and I'd see it, and I'd walk over to the hallway and I'd look down and it'd look at me, and then it'd turn off and walk like into the laundry room or into my parents' room. It'd walk through the door. And it would always trip me out. And I really remember things getting knocked off the counter in like the kitchen and stuff when I was little. And then my mom's like, why are you knocking things off the counter? I'm like, I'm not knocking things off the counter. What are you talking about?
That thing is cool.
Yeah, I remember one time too. I feel like it trapped me in my room.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I woke up one morning, it was early, and like I had to go pee.
Mhm.
And I go to like open the door and there's no lock on the door or anything. And I like am shaking it and it's just like locked. And
Mhm.
I start like banging on the door and I'm screaming for my mom. And she like comes running up and she comes running out of her room to my door. And she tries opening the door and the door just won't open.
Mhm.
And it does this for another like, it felt for like forever because I'm a little kid. It was probably only like 20 seconds or so, but it
Yeah.
released and I got out. It was, I don't know if that was paranormal. Maybe it
Yeah.
was just stuck, but
And this was in the
I,
same house that you were experiencing with
yeah, this was in
the
the same
shadow.
apartment with that shadow.
Mhm.
And my room was right next to my mom's room. So I like to think it was fucking with me.
Yeah, and I mean that does, when you go to the tropes of kind of like ghost stories and things of like, how people experience things, it seems pretty par for the course. Could you go more into the maybe the background history of your family before this and their experiences with the paranormal?
Yeah. So my mom has had so many paranormal experiences, had through so many paranormal experiences throughout her life. One of the earliest ones I remember her telling me about, I think she was like 12 or 13 or something like that.
Yeah.
And the doctors like admitted her to this hospital for girls who were like sick and addicted and stuff like that because they thought she was anorexic, but she
Yeah.
just had a super high metabolism like I do.
Hmm.
So she was super skinny
Yeah.
and she ended up in this crazy home. But this treatment center for girls was in an old abandoned hospital and they only used one wing of it.
Hmm.
And the other abandoned wing was like the child infirmary,
Yeah, I think infirmary.
infirmary, where they keep the babies when they're newborn and like sick and things like that. And these girls and my mom, they'd always talk about hearing like crying coming off from this area, and it was always
Oh,
dark
ghost
and the
babies.
doors were locked. And that, dude, ghost babies. That's
Ghost
literally,
babies.
it gives me goosebumps thinking about ghost babies. I don't like it. It
And
makes
it's
me
funny because they're
uncomfortable.
like the least threatening, kind of,
it, it's the
sort
least
of.
threatening, but it's like also the most like
Yeah.
disturbing.
Yeah. I know
Yeah,
what you
because
mean.
you're like, man, that's this baby's a spirit. So what
Hmm.
caused it to be here? And now it's trapped. That's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
But like in this home, a lot of these girls were messed up and shit, obviously,
Hmm.
because it's a home for like addicted girls, and a lot of them are addicted to drugs and getting in recovery.
Yeah.
And so none of the like doors had locks or anything like that.
Okay.
And these girls drug my mom into the bathroom with them, and there were like four or five, maybe six girls in this bathroom, and
Yeah.
there's two doors on either side from each room for where they
Yeah.
sleep. And do you know Bloody Mary?
Oh yeah. Well, yes, the classical,
The
the
classic,
age
yeah.
old spook yourself in
Yep,
the mirror game.
exactly. And so they drag my mom into this bathroom. They shut the doors, turn the lights, and the lights are still on. And they say, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. The lights go out. And my
Hmm.
mom says that this like slight haze like fills like the room and it just gets darker than like it would be with the lights off, if
Hmm.
you can imagine that.
Yeah, like there's no ambient light. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no ambient light. It's like that black paint that absorbs all light, she says. And it's like
Yeah.
on the other side of the mirror, there's this red fucking glow.
Yeah.
And they see Bloody Mary walking towards them. And she sees them and she starts sprinting towards the mirror, like towards them,
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
at the mirror. And she starts lashing out of the freaking goddamn mirror. All these
Yeah.
girls are freaking screaming on the top of their lungs. And like
Yeah.
at this point, the door, like the nurse ladies or the people running the place are like freaking out because like they're like, you guys are locking the doors. They're trying to get in because the other girls are like one of the
Yeah.
other girls was trying to go to the bathroom and the door was locked and they're like told on them. And they're
Yeah.
yelling, banging on the door, and they can't hear them. They can't hear anything.
Like almost
And
like in a time slip or some weird.
yeah, it's almost like a time slip where they slipped
Yeah.
into another like dimension or some shit. And like my mom, she's all the way in the back. She says she's hiding behind the toilet and she's like just holding her hands over her head, trying to protect herself, and the fucking toilet shaking.
Yeah.
Water's like spraying out of the sink. And this goes on for, she says, what feels like forever.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
goes on, she says, probably for like a 30-45 seconds, and it stops.
Yeah.
The lights come back on, and the doors unlock, and the doors open, and in come the ladies, and they just start screaming at them, yelling at them for locking the doors, and how did they do this? What's going on?
Yeah.
And all these girls are just crying on the floor, just freaking out. And
Yeah.
they're like, what is going on? What
Yeah.
happened here? Like, this is just blasphemy.
That's crazy. It like, especially, and so I don't know, not to kind of like go in on the fact that the area, it's like core haunting area one for me. And then second, I don't know, have you ever heard about poltergeist activity kind of stuff? It's usually like centered around like young teenagers, or like, and there's that theory that it's like, oh, it's just them getting, they're just like acting up, or maybe it's that these like pubescent emotional, and messed up, in this case, messed up kids are like, not manifesting, but just like kind of like, that energy and that vibe, plus the environment is really ramping up the weird factor, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I could definitely understand that, but like my mom was there, and she was fine. She was just a normal girl.
Oh, I'm also
But
saying
in
the
this
fact
dark
that like,
situation, it's like, but
yeah,
it could be all of those contributions could have attributed to the actual manifestation. I don't
think that
I don't
it's
know.
probably like them actually like in the area it is, plus like just
it's
the
being
energy that they have,
energy area,
the intent,
things like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what kind of makes me be like, oh, I don't know. It makes me like, this is very intriguing. And I really, and that's not obviously the only story your mom has. So, I mean, like, yeah, continue.
So the next one that I could recall, she told me, was when this was her and her sisters and one of their friends. They're teenagers again. It's after my mom had gotten out of this home. Aunt Takesha, she's the oldest. My mom's the middle child, and Danae is the youngest. Takesha's friend comes over with a Ouija board.
Oh,
yeah,
that's trouble.
And my mom's like, no, I don't want anything to do with this. And they're like, no, don't be a wuss. And so, they go about doing the Ouija board. And I don't really recall the outcome of like what the Ouija board said or did or anything like that. I just know it really freaked them out to the point that they were like, actually, no, they were in the middle of doing it. My grandma, Diana, came home and caught them. And she fucking lost her mind. And she's like, you fucking throw that away. Get that out of my house right fucking now. And if you don't finish a Ouija board and like close
you don't
portal,
close it off or do
not good. And so they throw this Ouija board away, and they go to bed that night. They wake up the next morning. The Ouija board is sitting on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And my grandma, she flips out on my mom, and then she's like, what the fuck? She's like, I told you guys to throw this away. They're like, we threw it away. You watched us go outside and put it in the garbage can outside. I don't know I didn't go out and bring it back in. And so they proceed to do it throw it again, throw it away again. They ripped it up this time, tore it apart.
Oh boy. I don't
go
know,
throughout your day, come to the next day, the Ouija board is all together and sitting on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
My grandma at this point is like losing her mind. She's like, this is not okay. Y'all fucked up. You brought some shit into my home.
Yeah.
And so she like tries to burn. I think she burns it. And that actually, I think that actually finally got rid of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember hearing anything about the Ouija board after my grandma burned it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but it came back 2 or 3 different times, I recall.
Yeah.
It was not good.
No, and
I
that's
think before
usually
they burned it, I think I don't know if she like talked to some of her friends and they closed the portal and then she burned it. So that way it was good. But
yeah, it's just like
I'm
somehow
assuming she probably did something along those lines because, like I said, she's
yeah.
very in tune with all that spiritual stuff.
Yeah, I know they did have a lot of stories about that type of thing or like why you don't. Yeah.
My grandma had lots of dreams
Mm-hmm.
where she like would astral project herself
Yeah.
and she would like she would be with like her loved ones who were deceased,
Yeah.
like like her mom, my great grandma Maddie, who was murdered when my grandma was a little girl. Like, and she had like been visited like vividly by her like dead dogs like at least 10 different times. she
They say
she told me like
vividly in
like
in
vividly like
dreaming
in a
or in
dream. Like, have
okay.
you ever astral projected?
I felt like I have, and I've definitely had like where I've been. Yeah, I would say yeah,
It's
I've had experiences that were similar to that.
she described it as like what I know as astral projection.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if she's experiencing seeing these spirits or something along those lines, it
Yeah.
leads me to believe that like potentially if you're, when you astral project, you are actually like your spirit is physically leaving your body and could
Yeah.
potentially enter a different realm or a different spectrum of space.
Yeah. Or you could just move more fluidly than you can in the three-dimensional physical world. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, like
absolutely.
odd thing, but when you were talking about, like how that thing was keeping you in the room, I've had what I would consider much more vivid dreams of
Hmm.
certain times, like more vivid dreams of like, oh, like me and my grandpa talked, or me and my, who's dead or whatever, or like,
Hmm.
but one that I had in specific, and I've had a couple like this where like I am in a dream and then I just wander into a space and I'm like, I realize like all of a sudden I get that feeling where I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. And like the most recent one I had, I don't know what I was doing, but there was like, it's one of those like, there's doors on like it's a big hallway and there's doors on every side, and I'm going just
I know
into
that
the
all
door
too
and I'm going to
well.
the next door and then I go into
Like
this
the
one door.
Scooby Doo one, yeah, the
Yeah,
Scooby
kind
Doo
of.
hallway, kind of like that.
Yeah,
But
exactly. And
I know that all too well. Yeah.
but I went into one or something and I just remember, like, just seeing like this. It was funny enough. It was kind of like a cultish looking stuff all over the place. And I'm just like, oh, I shouldn't be here. And all of a sudden, the door slams and I feel like myself being like kind of forced up against a wall by a force. And it was just like, it was much, you know, it felt weirdly real for being as obviously a dream because I did wake up from that and I was like, whoa, this really messed me up.
But you
And
were like so consciously aware
yeah,
during that dream,
it was
which
very
is
weird. I've found as I get older that I dream a lot less. So I don't know if it's just like when I
same
do
here.
dream and it's like, and I do remember it, it's just like feel that, but and it's not the first time. It's one of those things. I don't know if it's like, maybe I'm just like deja vuing or like mandala affecting myself where I'm just like, I've felt these type of things before, as a familiarity and maybe it's in real life, but I can't
Mhm.
rule out that it was something that happened in, the spirit realm. I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we can't prove
Yep,
exists,
exactly.
but
But
it's
you can
like,
always wonder.
I mean, it's up to you. If you believe it, then you can believe it. It's the same as religion. I mean, people believe in like reincarnation and heaven and things like that. And if you go to heaven, what are you? You're a spirit.
So now I would like
I
to
don't know.
actually ask, what religious beliefs do you hold, and what what is your thoughts about life and what's happening on this world?
Before we jump into that, I have a few more stories,
Actually,
ghost
go ahead. Yeah,
stories from my
let's
mom.
go
Yeah.
continue with the stories. Actually,
So this was 2000, between 2000 2003. Actually, it's 2001 because my little
okay, yeah.
sister was born. She was born in 2001.
Hmm.
So we lived down in Inglewood, Colorado. I lived on the corner of Pennsylvania and Oxford on this little house that has a fence all the way around it, and it's was a janky house. It was just gave you this weird vibe. And my my mom and dad, they slept in the basement. And literally my mom and dad, they were dead asleep. And their blankets,
I've heard. Yeah, go ahead.
their blankets, they literally, the paranormal activity thing where the blanket lifts up off of the person and comes floating back down, that happened to my parents. Legitimately happened. Like, as this happened, like my mom rolls over, like she like wakes up, she sees this big, like this black man who's like dressed in like golf attire and like one of those cool golfer hats that I like.
Yeah.
And
It's
he's
like
like,
a black
he's all
as like a figure, or it's like in like a
as
like a physical being,
as a
sort of.
physical, as like a manifestation.
Okay.
Like she sees this man standing there.
Yeah.
And he's like looking over my sister's crib.
Which is
And
in
my
your
mom,
parents' room?
which is in my parents' room.
Okay.
Yes. And my mom, she like freaks out. She's like, oh my God. So she freaks out, like rolls over, and she's like, wait a second. That's my baby. I need to get my baby. And she like rolls over to get up out of the bed. And she sees these two twin girls sitting there. And like in like synchronized, they say, it's okay. We're here to protect you and your baby and your family. We'll keep you safe. And my mom's like, what the fuck is going on right now?
Yeah, so you got a golfer ghost leaning over the crib, and then
this man, that guy was all bloody. He was covered in blood and stuff too.
Hot Skippy. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would. And he's leaning over baby's
so
crib.
Like,
did she see him while these two are there as well?
She saw him, and then she like closed her eyes, rolled over, and then she rolled over and saw those two, and he was gone.
Okay, yeah. So just I gotcha.
So they were being her protector. I don't know if he was trying to harm them or anything, or harm her or my parents or anything, but this dude would at the same house, I would have nightmares every single night. Vivid nightmares, like out of body experiences of myself running through the house, running away from like what I thought like were zombies or ghosts or something like that. I thought it was just because of like the video games I was watching and shit. But like, my mom would like hear me and like screaming in the middle of the night, and then Zach would literally be tortured by this man.
And like Zach is your brother.
Zach is my little brother. He's 3 years younger than I am. So I'm 2000. I'm 10. I'm 9, 10 years old. So Zach's 6. Yeah. And this guy my mom like would come upstairs to like, because she hears us screaming. You guys are tripping out. She's like screaming bloody murder. Like, why? What's wrong with my children? What's going on? Yeah. And she comes sprinting upstairs, and she sees that man sitting on Zach's bed with his hand on him, just like petting his head. Yeah. And Zach's just sitting there fucking trembling, fucking terrified, just looking at this guy.
So now your brother obviously sees this entity. Your mom is seeing this guy, and this is, clearly a specter or a ghost of some kind.
Yeah. And then in the same house, our family friend Chantel, she's been friends with us since I was a little lad. She is also very spiritually in tune. And she's seen lots of ghosts and things like that. I don't know all her stories, but this is one that I vividly remember. She was watching our house when we went to Arizona one time. And while she was sleeping on the couch, that man came to her and like,
oh yes, I remember.
She like astral projected up from the couch, and he like walked her through the experience of his death. Yeah. And what happened was these men like broke into this guy's house because he owed like a debt for like gambling or something like that. Yeah. And they killed him, but they made it look like a suicide. Yeah. They broke in, they held dude had a shotgun, and he pulled it out on they he tried to pull it out on him. They grabbed it from him and fucking, you
Yeah.
know, muscled him and held it up and pushed him down into the hallway and fucking held it up to his head and fucking blew dude's brains out, like from underneath his chin up through the top of his head. And she like saw all of this in vivid detail. She saw the fucking blood spray all over the place. She's like, she called my mom that like an hour after she like got out of this, you know, astral projection and being, you know, sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Freaking the fuck out, crying, just tears. I was like, Mom, what's wrong? She's like, she didn't tell me at the time, obviously, because she didn't want to freak me the fuck out, being a 9-year-old. But that house was so messed up.
And so now, I mean, unfortunately, I'm guessing that because of the gentrification going on in Inglewood, Colorado, and most of Denver area, that it may not be there anymore, that house.
I drove by it about 5 years. It's not mail times. I drove by it about 5 years ago and maybe 6 years ago, and it was still there.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know if it is there now.
I was only wondering just because it's like, okay, you've got, you know, like to look into that property and look into that just overall and just see like, you know, what is this, you know, was there a guy there that was there suicide? Yeah. I just want to know, like,
I believe
the validation.
I believe my mom and Chantel did look up what happened in that house, and then they said that a man had committed suicide there. But that's the hearsay. You know, I should look it up. I would like to look that up.
I mean, I just kind of typed in right now. I don't know what I just said suicide Inglewood, Colorado. You know, it's just
suicide Inglewood, Colorado, Oxford, Pennsylvania, and Oxford. Was it 6864 Pennsylvania Avenue or something? 6364
Pennsylvania Ave and what?
In Inglewood, Colorado. What?
Oh, what was the other one? Pennsylvania and what?
Oxford. Do you hear my dogs barking?
A little bit, yeah. Let's see.
Sorry.
No, I'm not. Unfortunately, I'd have to look really, really hard into this. Actually, let's look at this. Sorry to like derail it for a second there. I'm just like, now I'm like, man,
are you recording just the audio, or are you recording video too?
Well, this records video, but it gives me an audio sample too.
If you want to upload the video, I don't care. I don't mind.
Oh, that's fine. It's just more if I edit the audio and the video kind of thing. Like, it's.
Can I record this through my phone on Zoom?
I think so. What do you mean, like
we do with Audible? Like, can I record it like you are recording? Are you on your computer recording?
Yeah. So what it does,
is that an option I have on my phone, I wonder?
Yeah, if you do Zoom, and you can do Zoom for free up to 2 people, and up to
2 people. So is that
2 people up to 24 hours, and then if you have more than 3 people, you can get free up to 40 minutes or something.
Okay, so it's 2 including like me and you, or
so we could just do this forever, pretty much.
Okay. How much is it to upgrade to get another person to do an extended time?
Don't
worry about it. I'll figure it out later. Don't get off track.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine because I'm looking around. Of course, I'm never gonna find it. Oh gosh, this is not good. But I just looked up something and it was, I don't know, it's interesting because there's that angle where it's like you find out some information post death, and it's like it could be corroborated in some weird way. Like, not that, I mean, because the skeptics will all be out there like, oh, well, maybe Chantel looked it up and then knew that it was a thing. But it's weird that it's like, okay,
if she wanted to look it up back in like 2003, she would have had to go do some
straight searching.
It's not 2022. She didn't have a smartphone. She didn't have access to Google.
Not.
We had dial-up internet, and
but that's
your
why
search engine was Ask Jeeves.
Yeah.
Or Yahoo.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's kind of crazy too. Just like, people finding these things out and then having now at least the ability to kind of like go and corroborate that,
go look up and reaffirm those details. Yeah.
Which is why things.
I'll have to do that. You'll have to remind me, and we'll have to do a follow-up.
Yeah, I would actually like that. just because it's like, then if this man was, say, because that's one of those things, it's like, why do people stick around? It's like, well, restless spirit, unfinished business, like he was framed.
They're stuck here for a reason.
Uh-huh.
They're either, I think it's either this is a little off track, but I think it's either a spirit, like when somebody's dies in a wrongful way or in a traumatic way, I think it leaves a scar of their spirit and it's trapped.
Yeah.
And it's like a scar on the earth or something along those lines. Like you talk about Native American burial grounds and having very
they're very
paranormal experiences,
and
and very energetic. A lot of it is because they were murdered they just pointlessly murdered. And that leaves a scar. I don't know. I think some of these spirits, like maybe that dude, I think him like doing what he was doing was trying to get attention.
Yeah.
So he could have his truth be told and have it be resolved so he could move on.
Want to sort of communicate something. And obviously, it's interesting how like it takes that turn where he's got to come in there and he's gonna like, well, yeah, he's scaring the living daylights out of you. And I'd be like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why are you trying to scare me if you're trying to like tell me to do this?
If you want help, then help.
But then again, like where they may not even realize, they're just like, I'm just trying to be like, hey, what are you guys doing in this house? You think about how confusing it must be to like go through that transition of like being alive and then not like, and then being dead and then not expecting to like be very confused and just like things are happening around you. Maybe, I don't know what it's like. I have some weird, dumb idea just based on like what you hear in stories, but it's crazy.
It is. When I hear an even crazier thing about that man and that house. So, you know how little kids have like imaginary friends and things like that. So like I thought Zach had an imaginary friend when we were little, and he called him Chubbs because of Chubbs from Happy Gilmore, whose attire was very similar to this man's. Because he was a golfer and had that similar hat and all that stuff. He had like a sweater vest, all that same aesthetic. And so Zach called him Chubbs. And so I just assumed Zach's imaginary friend was Chubbs from Happy Gilmore. I talked to Zach like this a couple years back. This was that dude. He's like, no. He's like, no, Jay. I'm like, Zach, your imaginary friends was Chubbs from Happy Gilmore. He's like, no. He's like, that was the fucking guy who haunted our house. Yeah. It wasn't Chubbs. He was bloody. Everywhere he went, he was covered in blood, and his head, the top of his head was blown up. Yeah. Like, and I'm like, dude, that's insane. That house is something else. It was crazy. Yeah. Almost everyone in my house, in that house, had an experience with the paranormal. Yeah. And just it's interesting, just like the fact that you could kind of like, it's creepy, but you can look into the past and it's sickening kind of when you see that injustice and you're like, well, that makes sense, It does. And I mean, houses with that kind of like that time, because when you were living in there, that was what, probably like 25, 30 years old of a house, probably. Yeah, the house is probably 20 years old at least. Or probably more than that if that guy had lived there in the 70s or whatever it was. And am I crazy thinking that it was the 70s? Did you say the 70s? Am I just making that up? I didn't say the 70s. I've got a dolly with me. Oh, if you bark, you're out of here. For some reason, I was just always imagining it was the 70s. Maybe I said it was the 70s. Yeah. I don't know. It had to have been the 70s or the 80s. Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because I'm like, okay, when would that have happened? Like, I don't know, just crazy. Yeah, it is insane.
And I could not agree more, buddy. So with that, that's going to wrap up our first episode of Paranormal Guys for the Skeptical Eyes. My goodness, that's not the right name, but who cares anyway. That wraps up our first episode of Season 3. We're going to be back with Part 2 of this interview on Skeptical Eye for the Paranormal Guys.